to the Unconsumed podcast. I'm here with my good friend Ben Zoldan. Ben, welcome to the show. I'm super pumped to have you on because you have had a tremendous effect in my career in all different types of endeavors. And one of the reasons I even do this show at all is so I can spend time with guys like you. So thanks for coming on.
Well, this is take number 2 since we were doing this a couple minutes ago and you didn't hit record. So your intro this time is much better. Although last time you said this is my your most esteemed guest.
Well, you are the most esteemed guest, easily. No one else has written a book, so that's, in my mind, that's a clear distinction.
Well, I'm not a huge fan of my book.
Okay, well, tell me about that.
I don't like the name of the book.
What great salespeople do.
I don't know if I ever told you the story. May I?
Yeah, absolutely. Here it is. You can get it on Amazon. It's also, you can also get them used for relatively inexpensive. But Ben's got kids in college, so buy the book.
I have one kid in college, one in private school. Private high school is more expensive than college.
What?
I live in LA.
Ah, all right. Fair enough.
So, yeah, I don't like the name of the book. So here's a story. I don't think I've ever told you this. So we're about 3 months behind deadline.
Okay.
With the publisher McGraw-Hill. And we don't have a name for the book. And it's about stories and selling, and they want us to use either the word story or selling in the name of the book, right? Because that's how it's going to sell, sit on the sales shelf.
Right.
But I didn't want any of that. And my publisher, Danya, is like, getting all stressed. We need a name, we need a name. And I yelled at her. I go, this is a book about what great salespeople do. And I yelled at her. She goes, hold on a second. Hangs up, calls me back 15 minutes later, and she says, we got a name of the book. And I'm like, what are you talking about? She went and checked with the lawyers and whatever. What great salespeople do. Mm-hmm. And that's how we got the name. But here is why I share that. I don't think it was ever a book about what great salespeople do.
Right.
I'm a sales guy. I come from sales. This was really a project about what great non-salespeople do.
Right. Okay. Now you're opening up something interesting because I'll tell you this. So you have a training class that you do. Would you call it a training class? Because I don't feel like you do anything completely contemporary. So what do you call it? Workshop?
I don't even know. I don't sometimes know what I do. Would you call it training?
No, I wouldn't call it training at all. I'd call it education in a workshop format, which I thought was fantastic. So the biggest takeaway that I had was this isn't just how to do sales. This is how to do all relationships in life. Am I taking it too far? Because that's what I kind of picked up.
All right. Well, it did trigger something that I'll share.
Okay.
Oh, I was in Paris.
Okay.
And I was dragged to the Picasso Museum. And I kind of went scrape digging and clawing and screaming. And I get in there, and it's interesting. The Picasso Museum, it's like a spiral. You walk around the outside of it, mm-hmm. and really the story of his life. But you walk in on the first floor, and on the lobby floor, you see these perfect works. There's a portrait of a bust of a woman, perfectly technically sound. There's a bronze sculpture of a horse, and you're like, who is this? That's Picasso. But it's not Picasso. It's not the Picasso because those are his works when he first comes out of college, and he's the perfect, technically sound artist. But he's like everybody else mm-hmm. of his time. Right? And then you start to walk around, and then you see an eyeball outside the face. You're like, oh, I recognize that dude. And then you see some crazy stuff.
Right.
And really what it was to me is as you're walking around, it's a story of unlearning. And it just got triggered when you asked me if it was training. I almost think my aim is if we're getting to the good stuff, it's untraining. Mm-hmm. It's unlearning a lot of the conventional wisdom. So I've always had a disdain, this visceral disdain for conventional wisdom.
Conventional wisdom across the board, or conventional wisdom in terms of sales and interaction with people?
I don't know, probably for me, just conventions. Where I came from, just kind of not too thrilled with the status quo. Mm-hmm. So maybe just the idea of conventions.
Okay.
So when I say that, and you were talking about training, so you and I met at one of my programs. Mm-hmm. Somebody asks you what it is, what comes to mind?
My thoughts off the top of the head?
Yeah, your experience.
Yeah, so my experience, and it's called Storyleaders, if you're unfamiliar with this, is you go to a session and it's company sponsored, and you're not totally sure what's going on because you've been to 100 training things before, and you're like, here we go again, run the algorithm kind of thing. And it's a lot different because it's how to tell your story, it's how to listen to people tell their story, and it's how to be authentic and empathetic in relational settings, in professional settings, and just like how to be in general. Would you say, because that's what I took away?
Yeah, actually, hang on a second. All right. This is not a prop that I had, but it's a real life hat. But there's this dude like this in the back of the room with his hat backwards like that.
Is this me?
This is you. Right? I know you didn't prompt me on this. This is your audience. In a corporate setting, sitting in the back of the room like this. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, God, who is this guy? What a punk.
Oh, yeah, really?
But and then, right? And then, we start to get real.
Right.
And we start to hear people's lives. And I hear the story, this excruciatingly beautiful story about this guy who had all these passions and this beautifully connected family and faced some life traumas and trials that were so gnarly. Mm-hmm. And came out the other end as such a beautiful human being that this dude, who I was like, who is this punk? Out backwards, to me became somebody I just fell in love with. So I don't know if you've ever heard me say that, but that's what this is about. And I think that's like the message. Like when we really deeply share who we are, we go from who are these people, and we shed the mask and all that armor and all that scar tissue, mm-hmm. and like go beneath the surface. You're like, oh my gosh, I love this guy. So I think I met that guy with the hat backwards, 3 years ago?
Yeah, 3 years ago sounds about right.
And just nothing but love for you.
Hey, appreciate that.
It's not a plug, but I just think it speaks to maybe the beauty in all of us. So if we, you had a thought there.
Yeah, I mean, so I was telling you this earlier, is that I feel like there's, especially in a political climate that I think everyone can kind of smell out there, is that there's this, you use the term visceral, and I'll use it too, is there's a visceral reaction of people trying to defend themselves or being scared of certain things, or like, he's trying to get me, she's trying to get me, I can trust him, I can't trust her, so on and so forth type of thing. And I think if you start looking for it in the context of what you're talking about, is you can see someone that doesn't potentially look very friendly to you, and then get to know them a little bit and hear their story and tell your story. Like, you can knock down a ton of barriers that way. And in terms of sales, and we're talking business here, is that same method is exactly what I've done in my career, and what you gave me was like the tools to know how to do it properly. Does that make sense?
Is it the tools, or maybe the permission?
Permission is a better word, because I always wanted to do it that way. I always wanted to be more of an authentic salesperson, because you know salespeople, right? You can line up you can line up 10 of them, and 9 of them are all the same, right? That's how I think.
Well, probably 9 of us are following the playbook, and then we become like these robots. Yeah, I'll share an experience with you. May I?
Yeah, absolutely.
So I worked with Salesforce for the better part of a handful of years. And I'd come in and do a workshop for like 30 people at a time. Mm-hmm. And we slowly, over the course of 3 days, start to chip away, go a little bit deeper, right?
Right.
And really get people in tune with themselves. Then bring that to how we get in tune with other people, and then we kind of connect around a bigger purpose.
Right.
That's a pretty esoteric thing, but I'm doing this workshop in San Francisco, and the VP of sales for this group's name is Frank. He brings me in. I start to like really connect with Frank. I like Frank, but he's this big guy, pretty like stern, like VP of sales guy.
Right.
And at the end of the first day, the homework for everybody is think about your life story and come back tomorrow and share it. I mean, it's kind of like that. There's not a lot of tools. It's not like this framework, but just bring to day 2 like your life. Mm-hmm. And like people get so much stress. So I'm leaving after the first day. I'm grabbing my computer, and this guy in the workshop says, Ben, can you come over here? I'm like, okay. His name's Ryan. He's like, I got to talk to you. I'm like, what's up? And he goes, I don't think I could do this. I'm like, what? He goes, I don't think I can open up. I'm like, what are you talking about? He goes, because of Frank. And he goes on to describe Frank as this like super, almost bully type of manager. He's like, all he asks me is my commit, my forecast. When my wife was sick, he was like calling me up and asking me like what I was doing. I mean, and like I kind of like Frank, but I didn't want to placate him. So I don't want to say like, oh, Frank's is. So I just said, listen, man, I get you. I don't know what to say. Just do what you feel comfortable doing. Right. And we left for the night. But that entire night I left and I was like really stressed. Like if Ryan thought that, probably everybody in the workshop thought that.
For sure.
And it did working for Frank. We all know what kind of boss that is. And the whole workshop's going to get derailed because nobody's going to open up. Anyways, I pull it together for day 2. And the morning of the second day, we send everybody off randomly in like groups or pairs and to share their stories. Mm-hmm. And randomly, Ryan and Frank are paired together. And like I see it, I can't intercept it. I'm like, oh no, what do I do? Right, like the worst possible scenario. But I have the whole workshop to manage, so I let it go, and it just kind of goes away. And here's the thing: nothing happens again. Ryan's cool. It's a great workshop. On the third day, the workshop ends in this like fireworks, if you remember, because people really like all in, not just with, they're all in with themselves. Right. They're like, I'm ready to go like move mountains for the world. I'm ready to end this workshop. And Ryan walks up to the front of the workshop and he like basically pushes me aside and says, Ben, I have something to say to everybody. And looks across this entire room and goes, I want everybody here to know that I always hated working for Frank. And I'm like, oh. Uh-oh. And he starts to go off on Frank in front of everybody, describes how bad of a manager he is, how much of a bully he is. Frank's in the corner like white. I'm like this. And then he kind of pauses and goes like this. He goes, but here's the thing. I want everybody to know. I was in Frank's group yesterday when we shared our stories. Right. And after listening to Frank's story, and he looks over at Frank in like the most like beautiful way, and he goes, Frank, I will run through walls for you, brother. I love you. Goes over to Frank, hugs him. I'm like, what just happened? I'm thinking about that. Like, what just happened? Then Frank comes up and he goes, I guess you all want to hear my story, and shares this beautiful story about why he is the way he is, and describes going through life, literally going through foster homes, not having any resources. And he ends by sharing, if any of you want to know why I have this like need for like control and I hold on for like dear life to the steering wheel, like now you know why. And it was as if everybody went from, like you said, we have our walls up. Yep. Like we're giving each other the Heisman. Dude, it's not just in sales, it's in life. Yeah. We literally, like, that's magic. Think about this. It's magic if we could go from walls up to wanting to run through walls for people. And what I've learned and what I want to share, what I care so deeply about, as you know, is why I want to foster a culture of real, authentic storytelling where we share the experiences that shape who we are. It's that simple. Right. It's that simple, but it's just not easy. Yeah.
Well, yeah, it takes a Ryan to stand up in front of people and open it up, right? I'm sure you see this all the time, do you not? It takes one.
It takes one. I think it takes a lot of courage for Frank to be a leader and say, this is who I am, this is where I come from. But what if we just kind of operated that way? Like, people would see us. All right, so I don't know if you have a sales constituency out there that are listening to your show, but I'm just wondering how people put their guards up to us. We're like every other solution-selling robots. We come in with a stupid agenda because some caveman sales training told us we should start with an agenda. And then we should jump into diagnostic questions. And then we should summarize what we heard to pretend like we're listening, although we're not listening. We're just listening to things that will help us sell the wares we have. It's so stupid. Right. It's like, it's so stupid. I mean, I don't know about you, bro, but I can't turn on the news at night.
I quit. Yeah. It's over.
No, I'm serious.
It's all agenda, right?
Okay, so I can't see what people are how they're going to view us right now, but are we a split screen right now?
We'll be a split, yeah.
Okay, so we're a split screen. like if you take the news, and they always have somebody on this side of the aisle and this side of the aisle, Republican, Democrat, pro this, pro that. And it's always a battle because people are like, this, boom, and then this is my argument, and this is my argument, right?
Mm-hmm.
I have this fantasy because I live in Hollywood. I actually want to start a new news program. And I want to call it, ready for this one?
Yeah.
I want to call it Do I Get You?
Okay.
Like, think about, do I get you? So the only job, if I'm on this side and you're on this side of the aisle, right, is this. Democrat, Republican, is that if you were to tell your story, experiences that inform your your ideals, your perspective, your politics, your beliefs, right? My job is just to see if I get you. Like just be able to play back your story.
Yeah.
Like it's that simple. Like I think some of it, like, dude, it's not funny, bro. Like we could do so much better. Things would go away. By the way, I'm no expert at this.
Yeah.
I do this business because I watch magic happen. And I know that the few times I get it right, and that's whether I'm a father, a son,
mm-hmm.
a friend, a spouse, a sales guy, a leader, a trainer, a dude in an Uber, checking in at the airport. The few times I get it right, or I watch it it's magic.
Right.
Like, dude, so much better. So I just think the conventions, going back to your first question about how I view the esteemed world of processes and systems. All right, so last week, you were going to try to get me on.
Mm-hmm.
I'm in Mexico. I want to tell you why this is important. You ready?
Yeah, I'm with you.
All right, so about 3 weeks ago, I heard that San Miguel, Mexico, is the most beautiful city in the world.
Okay, you got to test that, right?
Well, it's the most, I love Mexico, but the most beautiful, I've been to beautiful cities. The most beautiful, like by Condé Nast, it was ranked like the most beautiful city in the world. It's at 6,000 feet in the middle of Mexico, landlocked, this beautiful Spanish colonial cobblestone road town. So I wanted to go figure it out. So I actually got on a plane and went there. I was offered a place to stay there. I went to, with no agenda, I went to San Miguel, Mexico. And I get there, and that's when you were like, dude, can we do the show?
Yeah.
And I said, I'm in Mexico. And you're like, is there internet connection there? Like, you got to get your Wi-Fi right. And I'm like, the most amazing thing was this. I felt when I got there that I had left an underdeveloped third world country to come to this magnificent, totally developed, totally connected place. Yet the irony was there was like no technology. I get to this home that's on this cobble street road. I want you to imagine this, just cobblestone streets, colorful, vibrant colors, oranges and yellows and aqua blue, like homes that are 400 or 500 years old, mm-hmm. right? And across the street from me, this is a weird, kooky image. Across the street from me, they're doing construction on this home. And there's all these bricks laid out. They're like 10 feet high, like 10 bricks deep, mm-hmm. right? And I go back, and there is this bricklayer and this guy on the third floor of this building. And he's lobbing these bricks up to the guy. And this is weird, but I was watching this go down. He would throw them in a way that the apex would like be right there, and he would just stop in this guy's hand, and he just put it down. And I was like watching, this is so kooky, but I do not care. And it would just land, and he would plot him. And in like an hour's time, I was just watching this, like the system was done. And I share that because the whole time I was there, everything works.
Right.
The beauty wasn't necessarily in the physical beauty. The beauty was in the culture, this totally connected culture. These two people were so connected. And I noticed everywhere I went, everybody, the rituals and the practices on the streets were like, I was thinking, here I am, some intimidated, American who's not going to be received. Everybody's, buenos dias, ¿cómo está? Just inviting me in because it's just totally connected culture. And I just think I don't want to be a hater on technology. They could have got the bricks to the roof faster with some technology.
Yeah.
So I don't want to be this hater on technology, but I just want to speak to this thing about what I've been thinking a lot about lately in the work that I do, and just sort of that I've been trying to look for the patterns and the themes around.
Right.
Is like how we could be like more connected and be like a real community, like how much more we would thrive.
Mm-hmm. So like there's no shortage of people talking about culture in like real locally, right? So that's culture in the United States, that's culture in your workplace, that's culture in your house. If you were to, you know, kind of, because you spend a lot more time on this than I do, can you tell me some things that like maybe we could do, or maybe paths we could go that would get us closer to something like that? And so one thing that you always do, and this is probably why you're so hard to get a hold of, is that when you talk to people, you put your phone down. That would be a start, right?
Not a bad start.
Yeah, so that's one. Do you have anything else like that? I mean, you're on the spot here.
I mean, I don't know. Do you feel like when you meet people, you're all in with them? When you get into, so I have a friend, Tammy. Mm-hmm. We actually got to know each other through my work. She was a client. She's now a colleague. She inspires me, and it's really interesting when she expresses what this work means to her, like storytelling. And she says it's not always about storytelling.
Right. Like
it's almost about being in a mode. And this mode is just being like all in. But like all in means like squared up. And she says when she started to, after she really kind of brought, shined a light on some of the values that we bring into bring into focus. Mm-hmm. And think about these values: being empathetic, being courageous, right. being vulnerable, being in a storytelling mode, like really being an engaged listener. Like these things require being all in.
Oh, absolutely.
I mean, I think about being all in. What she said to me was so small, but I guess sometimes the small things are really some of the big things in life. She says, I learned that when I used to go on sales calls, if it was with an executive, what would always happen was she'd go to the lobby and maybe an assistant would come out, greet her, and take her into the conference room and say, something like, how was your flight or how was your drive in? And what is the general answer?
Great, good, fine.
Right? What happens if it's not good, great, fine?
It's a lie.
Right? So we already have this veneer of superficiality. And she said to me something that was like something that I've enlisted, which was always be like, take a pause and be all in on that answer. Yeah. It's kind of like, start your day with an apple versus, let's say, a bag of chips. If you start with an apple, then the next meal you're going to continue those habits. And then you might work out. Then you might not sit around. You might not turn on the TV. You might have a healthy dinner. But you start with chips in the morning, you're going to be slouchy. Then you're going to flip on the TV. Then you're going to be like bad posture. You're not going to work out because you're going to feel frumpy.
Right.
Because it's like builds momentum. So I think there's this idea as if we just don't take those little moments and be all in and answer these questions. Like, hey, the flight in was bumpy. It was really hard. I hate flying.
Right. It's funny you mentioned that because I try to take practical things away from like you're a guy that has some deep thoughts and some definitive opinions on things. And so I listen to you and I think, okay, so when I'm talking to someone, I need to cut the small talk. Like I should answer them with some honesty, right? Is that essentially it?
Yeah, well, maybe what you're saying, I think I don't know, unless I was projecting, it felt to me like you were saying something even different. It almost felt like you were saying it requires one person to go first.
It absolutely does, and that's what I'm saying. Like in your story about Ryan, it takes one person to take a little bit of a leap in order for that to even have a chance, right?
Totally.
Because if you get all walls, then you have separation, and one person has to take down the walls and say, "All right, here's what we can do. You should take your wall down too," and then that's how that starts. It's a chain event. I think there's more made about culture and more people telling stories about culture inside of organizations than I think there should be, but there's really only a few ways to start it. Do you agree with this?
I had a friend, like an old friend, I lost contact with him. I worked with him maybe 12, 15 years ago. Yeah. And not too long ago, he emailed me and he said, Ben, I just noticed you have a book out. I read the book. Like, it's so like what I'm like, let's connect. And we get on the phone. It was so cool. He goes, Ben, you're onto something here. I feel as if you're writing the zeitgeist.
Zeitgeist is a ghost, is it not?
No. So here's the thing. Like, I didn't know what the word meant, but so I had to go.
Right.
Literally, I had to go Google it, and what it means is like a wave, like this whoosh.
Okay.
So he was basically talking about these ideas that we're talking about: connectedness, authenticity, being all in, community, like real community. And so, like he said, Ben, you're riding this wave of like these values. Like, what a good time for your business is kind of what he was saying. And I was like, dude, I don't buy that. Like, I don't feel that way. What I feel like is a lot of people are talking about it. And we have these big words, especially in Silicon Valley, these big words that become hollow and shallow, like compassionate leadership and community and culture and authenticity, even storytelling. Like, dude, look at your LinkedIn feed right now.
Dude.
And you're going to see some stupid, here are the 5 tips to storytelling, which is no different than any other prescriptive linear way. Like,
it's been hijacked.
I don't know, but maybe, and I know that's, if somebody, I don't know. I know it's hard. I mean, I take it I say that, I guess, gently, because when I first started to get into this work, I was going about it. My very first sales call, I was pre-selling Storyleaders.
Okay.
And so I'm developing this model. I know I'm into this stuff, but I'm developing this stuff, but I have to make some dough, so I'm pre-selling it. I enlist my sales skills. I get a bunch of sales calls. I'm flying around the country. I literally get a sales call from a cold call, basically, to the SVP of sales at Career Builder.
Okay.
Based in Chicago, they have 1,500 salespeople. So I'm like, that's a big opportunity. I'm all stoked, ready, all fired up. I fly to Chicago. It was 8 years ago. I get there. I sit down with this guy, Andrew. And he's like, okay, tell me a story. So I start to tell him what I think is a story,
Okay.
right? Because I have the model. And I start to say, well, this is why stories are so important. There's this, we come from a world where it's all left brain and, it's this logical, linear, but we need to be more right brain. I'm getting all sciencey. And he goes, okay, tell me a story. And I go, okay, well, first of all, hold on a second, because what happens is there's neurochemicals in the brain. And when somebody hears a version of Once Upon a Time, their heart rate slows. They start to put their defenses down. They open themselves up because stories are the emotional vehicle. And I'm going through this because I think I think I've developed it in this narrative way because I followed the handbooks that somebody gave me.
Right.
And he goes like this. All right, tell me a story. And this is going on for probably a half hour. It's a worst sales call. I leave. And I feel like I share that story because here's what I got from it.
Mm-hmm.
I was kind of following the way people were talking about these things, but I wasn't really practicing the things I was preaching. Because although these things may seem simple, here are the 5 steps to telling a story, they're really hard. And what I've learned is this: to teach stories, or to really create or foster an environment of storytelling, we got to tell stories. To foster an environment of listening, we got to listen. To foster an environment of vulnerability, we got to be vulnerable.
Right.
To foster an environment of courage, somebody has to lean into their fears. So for me, the way I think about it is less, even though storytelling stands front and center, it doesn't stand alone. It's more about practicing these. I don't even know. I'm not smart enough right this second to know if these are values or they're human natural laws. And the laws are these, these really, to do the difficult stuff, to lean in, to go first, to take off our armor and let people in and expose ourselves even though we're scared that people are going to judge us.
My initial reaction, and based on some research that I've done in the past couple of years, I think it is biological law. And I think we say it takes one, and one to lead, 2 to follow, and then you've got essentially a tribe, right? And that's the scientific breakdown of that. Is that I think that these are the things that enable community, and we've used all the technology, starting in our politics and things around us, to create the opposite of those things. And I look at the archetypal stories. I talk about this constantly. People are probably really annoyed by that. But they're laws. They're the stories we've been telling since the beginning of time, right? And if you look at the themes in these stories, They are, who will go out and address the snake. It's the leaning into your fear. Who will kill the dragon? It's all the things that come along with that. And so I don't want to derail us into that topic, but I would just put that out there for you as like, hey, there's a rabbit hole you can go down and maybe think some things a little differently.
I think this is worth talking about. It's kind of like maybe we have it backwards. We're hardwired to be democratic. This thing about like top down and hierarchy doesn't exist in the wild anywhere. So if they're natural laws, why are they natural laws?
Those things absolutely exist in the wild.
Well, so take this. How does a herd shift? It's not the, how does a flock of birds, how does a herd, how does
a school of fish.
A school of fish, bees, the queen bee's in the middle. The so-called tribal leader is in the middle, right? Protected because of safety by the herd. And it's always somebody, an animal on the outside of this herd, and the so-called leaders in the middle, protected. They can't see danger. They don't know where prey is. They don't know how to repel from predators. It's one of the animals on the outside. They'll gravitate, one on the outside will gravitate towards prey. One becomes two, two becomes four, four becomes 16, and then the whole herd or tribe moves together. We are hardwired biologically, evolutionarily, to be democratic. There's nothing's ever,
well, you use the example of bees, right? So the queen is on the top of that hierarchy, if you want to explain it that way, and she provides the thing that allows the tribe to have a next generation. So she's protected for that ultimate value.
Right.
And so, yeah, the tribe will move with her. What do you call a bunch of bees?
Actually, no, all right, so this is kind of weird, but I'm going to share another quick little story.
Yeah.
I'm playing basketball with my youngest daughter in my backyard. Daughter, when she was younger, this is like 10 years ago. She's probably like 6. And we're playing basketball, and she looks up and goes, "Dad, what's that cloud?" And I'm like, "Get in the house!" In front of us was literally what looked like a cloud of bees. We get in the house, all of a sudden my living room has the cloud. We bolt out of there, grab the dog. It's just she and I and our dog. The rest of my family was out. We call 911. I don't know what to do. I call 911. Fire trucks come, and I'm like, "Dude, I'm so sorry." Like 3 trucks come. Like, "Dude, we do this all the time." They suit up, they go in the house, right? They say, "Okay, we can't exterminate them. We're not allowed to. You have to call a bee guy," whatever they're called. Bee guy comes in there and takes care of it. Says there's like 8 million bees in my house. Like 8 million bees in my house. Because what happened was this. He goes, "Let me tell you how this goes down." This swarm that looked like a cloud was probably a couple blocks away yesterday. But what happens is the workers on the outside, the pawns, the worker bees on the outside, one landed on your chimney. Called a couple of his buddies over, became 2, became 4, became 16, became a tribe, and the whole thing moves together. But it always starts with the one little bee on the outside, and then they all follow.
Right.
So this idea of top-down leadership, I want to call that out because, especially in the sales profession, it's like we feel as if we got to go to the top-down selling, get to the decision maker. I'm not so sure that's the truth. I'm wondering if the way we sell is we go find people that are into changing something,
right,
that are not happy about whatever's going on with the status quo, and that person doesn't have to be a so-called decision maker. That person will become 2, will become 4, and then the so-called leader will follow.
And you would have a lot of people that would hear that and say, that's a freemium model, that's a champion creation model,
These people might be smarter than me, but I can tell you this, selling for 20 years, any big sale I've ever had has fallen. So you worked for a company called Tableau Software.
All right.
And that's where I met you. So I had taken my work throughout your entire enterprise.
Right.
Hundreds of people over the course of years that I had worked with your company. So that in a classic sense was like an enterprise sale for me. I'm selling seats of software. That's kind of like my model. It's not like I got to the so-called decision maker. I got to one guy who was in North Carolina who read my book. The Southern guy named Crawford.
Crawford Keys, huh?
Crawford Keys, and he read my book. And he was a sales engineer at another company and got my book. Came over to Tableau and said, "Ben, I'm into your stuff." I said, Crawford, let's figure out a way to go from you to somebody else. He put somebody else together. Then he put 4 people together. And then we slowly started to go up the food chain. And then these people, these leaders up here, these so-called leaders, started to listen to Crawford's little message that he spread virally. Because ideas spread virally. So when you go back at 15 minutes and you say these are natural laws, ideas, beliefs spread so much more powerfully than problem solution.
Yeah.
So maybe it's, and so I'm not smart enough to give that a label. I just know that these so-called sales experts are like operating from a playbook that's outdated. They don't know any better. They're operating from a playbook that probably came in 1980 from a bunch of people who I don't even know if they've really, really tried to advance the profession of selling.
Right.
But now you're gonna get me on this kick where if we've advanced it, you would expect a career that is so universally admired.
And it's so universally disadmired.
It sucks.
Right.
It sucks. Like, why isn't anybody questioning it? Like for me, I'm not an expert. I just know that there's a way to help people break down barriers and be community. Like literally operate in such a connected way, like the guy throwing bricks
the brick, yeah.
to his buddy, or Frank having people absolutely adore him and run through walls for him just because he shared his story. Like, dude, look around. Are we not getting this? Mm-hmm. So, we have it backwards. I think the reason I was always an effective sales guy, and I was always at my best when I wasn't following the model. Right. And I always knew when I was really thriving, it was because I was the anti-sales person.
Mm-hmm. There's something to be said for that because I've had some success in sales over the years, and it's always fast and loose. It's me running through what I think is best for this situation rather than hitting the check boxes or what is going to bring the most value to this specific person I'm sitting in front of. And it's not always the person who can write the check that's going to get you your deal or whatever. And that's how it's done, in my opinion, in a lot of ways. But anyways, I hate to cut you off. Go ahead.
No, maybe it's not your opinion, dude. You're speaking like natural laws, bro. I think we should every company has on their website a page that speaks to their values. Mm-hmm. And the same values: trust, honesty, do right by the customer. I mean, Wells Fargo had those same values, and look what happened to them, right? No, right. It's just it's putting them into practice. I think we should change that. And so here's just an idea. What if we call these things natural laws? And if you look at natural laws, you think of things like we are hardwired evolutionarily, biologically, to be democratic, not top down. We're hardwired to be bottom up. That's number one. We know that. Any, dictatorships don't work.
No. Yeah, exactly.
Period. That's number one. Number two, we're hardwired to reciprocate.
Right.
If I go first and take off my mask, and I take off my mask because I trust you, maybe there's a natural law, the natural law of reciprocity will have you then say, then I'm going to take off my mask and trust him.
Right. So for people that don't hear these terms all the time, when you say all in, you say take off a mask. Like, what exactly do you mean when you say those terms?
All right. Well, all in is becoming one of those phrases that's becoming hollow and shallow too. But the person who turned me onto it is Brene Brown. Right. So. And I'm sure by now everybody. TED Talk. Just kind of like the coolest. When I grow up, I want to be Brene Brown. So catch her TED Talk on vulnerability. But I actually met her a couple of years ago at a conference here in LA. And she gets on stage. I actually met her where she was like the keynote speaker. And she gets on stage. She kind of does this. And the room's like super quiet. Like, what is she going to say? And she gets up there and she says, it's not the critic who counts. It's not the person who's criticizing the person who's in the arena, right? Who's getting their face marred with blood, sweat, and dust. It's not about the critic. It's about the person who's actually doing it.
Right. Teddy Roosevelt.
Teddy Roosevelt. She actually says, but see, I'm not smart enough to know that was Teddy Roosevelt. I'm like going, you go, Brene. Like, you rock. Like, there she goes again. And she literally goes, that's not me. That was Teddy Roosevelt's Man in the Arena speech. Okay. And she talks about this idea about the critic, that we acquiesce to the critic. And really what it's about is, it's not about the person who's criticizing the person who's doing. Whether we're failing or making mistakes, it's about the person who's all in. And that's the way I think about all in. Like, if we're all in, we're all in.
So you're defining all in by being all in.
Yeah, but here's the thing. We have our own meter. Like, people are like, what? There's probably going to be some stupid LinkedIn post or blog about what are the 5 steps to being all in.
Right.
And what I've learned is, if I'm ever asking myself, what are the steps, number 1, or number 2, am I too much or not enough? Right? It's like prune juice. Do I want to take 3 glasses, or is a half a glass not enough? Like, I don't know what the exact amount is.
Yeah.
I'm not all in. What I've learned about being all in is, you know that fear when you were 13 years old and you wanted to go up and introduce yourself to somebody? Could have been socially, it could have been a girl, a boy, it doesn't matter. And you have that feeling inside, that visceral feeling when the molecules are coming up and you get nervous, and you don't do it. You don't go up.
Mm-hmm.
We know that feeling. I know that feeling to this day as a 46-year-old. It's the same feeling as being the 13-year-old who's scared to go up at the dance to introduce myself.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, if we ever lean into something where you feel that emotion and you can recognize it and label it, and then do something and lean in even while in that state of fear, like, it's a feeling. And a feeling doesn't have steps. It's not this linear thing. We know what being all in is.
So let me play this to you. We're saying these things are natural laws, these things that create great communities, the democracy of things, and the storytelling and protection and trust and all these types of things. If they're natural laws, then all in would be withholding or not stopping any of those things from manifesting in your life. It would be not holding anything back and letting those things come out. Would that be on par with what you're saying? Because that's what I'm reading.
Yeah, can you tell me where you're coming from?
So I'll tell you this. So like when I'm in a situation, and I'll use your example of going up and meeting someone, is that your natural inclination when you're meeting someone that you perceive higher in the hierarchy, to use the term, is to be nervous, or it's something that there's fear about, and you don't want to go introduce them to you, and when you don't, it's like you held something back, you held what you wanted to do away, and it didn't get done. You hear what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And so if you're all in, I guess, this is the first time I'm verbalizing this, so it's coming out chunky, but it's like, if you pull all the stops, then those natural things will come out. You won't hold anything back, and that will result in lack of fear. That will result in confidence. That will result in courage. That will result in being the one that steps out first and is the person that knocks down the walls. Because 9 times out of 10, and I've said that a few times, I gotta get a new phrase, is when you go and you meet somebody, or that person you wanted to go introduce yourself to, they would be perfectly fine to have a conversation with you. You created all the fear. You made it hard. You created chaos for yourself. You didn't need to do that. Would have been just fine. And then the 1 time out of 10 it didn't go great, whatever. Like, they're not where I need them to be anyways, and it's good to find out.
By the way, when you say 9 out of 10, I love that, because I kind of feel like we miss 9 out of 10. Because it's easier to not to.
Yeah.
It's easier to not to. So 9 out of 10 times we miss. And I know we're not going to be on all the time, but you just triggered something in me that I want to share with you. So you asked me earlier what was going on with me before we hit record.
Mm-hmm.
So I lost my father a month and a half ago. Did you know that?
I think I had heard that. So yeah, sorry to hear that, man.
Thank you. So I want to share something that happened. And it's about being all in and not being all in. And I'm going to juxtapose 2 experiences that happened to me. Okay?
Okay.
But I have to go back to the beginning. About 6 months ago, I got referred to this woman who's an executive. Her name's Mary. At a company I'm working with, I'm trying to proliferate my work throughout the entire enterprise. And anyways, I have a call scheduled with her, and I did something I know I shouldn't do, and I always get it wrong when I do. I schedule it while I was driving. A first sales call, okay?
Right.
So I'm driving, and I'm the worst, dude. I cannot multitask. But what are my chances of meeting somebody for the first time, trying to explain to them that this work's about being all in?
Mm-hmm.
And I'm driving. How all in am I going to be?
Right. I was going to say, those are not congruent.
They're not congruent. So I'm not, here I am, just totally. So I start off, though, trying my best to share a story, to listen to her, to try to get to know her, to do everything to really connect. But it's just kind of clunky, and it's not going anywhere. And it's about 30 minutes, and it's kind of like Q&A. It's like one of those where, it's like stays at the superficial level.
Right.
And I get off the call, and I'm like, why did you do that? Like, you just blew it. Not only did I blow it, but now it's going to get back to other people in the company that I'm like this fraud. I actually get a call from my so-called sponsor. She goes, Ben, like, dude, you didn't really, you didn't really showcase yourself well. Anyways, it goes away.
Right.
A horrible conversation. Now going back to my father, I spent the better part of the last 6 weeks of his life tending to him really at his bedside. He was going through treatment, cancer treatment. He lost his battle with leukemia in Miami, and I rented an apartment with my brother, and we just kind of posted up there and just tended to him. And one day, I was being at his bedside, literally sometimes for 15 hours a day. So almost to the point where I had my computer sometimes, and I'd kind of do work. And on this particular day, 5-6 months had gone by, and my person over at this company was like, you need to go reach out to her again, see if you could reconnect. So I send an email out to that woman,
right,
who I had this horrible sales call with. And I just wrote her some check-in email. Hey, I'm thinking about you, would love to connect. Literally, while I'm at my dad's bedside, she writes back, sorry, we have no budget, maybe 6 months later, in the middle of the year. You know the routine in sales, right?
I do. Unfortunately.
Some blowing me off email, but I look at the bottom of the email, and she works for a healthcare IT company, multi-billion-dollar global, healthcare IT company.
You'd know the name.
The bottom of it says, Vice President of Oncology. And it was the most surreal moment, and here's why. I'm sitting next to my father on the cancer floor of this hospital, administering cancer treatments. And I look, and her job is to automate the processes, she's there to help this system. This is why it was surreal. I look at her title, I forgot she was VP of Oncology. And I'm thinking to myself, I'm in the middle of this, because I spent so much time in this hospital, dude, I become like the general contractor. I see this specialist come in, this specialist, and it's all disconnected.
Mm-hmm.
The healthcare system's disconnected. And I'm literally telling an oncologist what I heard from the ear, nose, and throat doctor, what the other nurse said, because it's all disconnected. The systems are, the people are, it's just, we can do so much better.
Right.
This person's job is they sell platforms that can help them. And I'm sitting there going it was surreal. So anyways, that night, it's kind of I don't know this feeling. It was just so surreal. So I wrote her this email, and I said, hey, it just really struck me. I forgot that, that you're in oncology. I just want to share with you that I'm with my father. And I told her the whole story. And I said, I feel like I'm like the manual general contractor, and all these doctors and nurses or specialists are and I'm some sales guy, some whatever, right,
mm-hmm.
is coordinating with doctors. Literally, it's crazy.
Right,
and I go
right.
and I'm telling her this, and I tell her the story. And I send it over to her. And I don't hear back from her that night. And I sent the email to a friend of mine. And I go, I just want you to know that this is what I wrote her. Is that cool? And this other friend was like, oh, whoa. That's pretty heavy.
Right.
And I was like, you know something? I don't care. It was real, dude. It's what I believe. I believe I can help them be an advocate for my dad.
Right.
Period. Fix this system. And the only way we're going to fix the system if your people are all in, and your people are not all in. They're not engaged. They're not. They're not telling the stories. They're not connecting. They're selling, and they're selling in a way that's putting up barriers And I told her that in this email. But the best part was, I could tell you this, I no longer felt like it mattered if she got back to me or not. Right. I almost felt like I let it rip. I'm all in. If you're with me, great. If you're not, it's also great. All my own pretense went away because I was real. And that's what happens. And she didn't get back to me the next day. And then she sent me an email. And her next email was not about the workshops or about budgets. It was about her parents, that she was flying down to, I think it was Georgia, to take care of her mom who has cancer. And she totally opened up and shared with me in this email. And then it started this chain, and we went back and forth. And the conversation went like this to what was real. And it got to the point, it's like, I care about making a difference in the world. I care about making a difference in the world. And let's see, we're recording this on a weekend. On Tuesday, I'm going to be doing a workshop with her.
Fantastic, man.
But I don't even care about that. I think what it speaks to is this: how we get to a place where we like get to what's real together. And it's such a different way of selling than the 1980 solution selling playbook, or worse, the 2014 Challenger sale. Go challenge somebody. Like, really, guys? Like, what are we talking about? Well, let's call it, you know how people say relationship selling's dead? I think what it is it's never really started.
Interesting.
Let's really get to a point where we know how to really connect with people at a level where we're climbing up that ladder and getting to like the core of what matters.
Yeah. You know, it's funny because I guess it's not funny, and I just say that as like a thing I say to fill time. And you always expose these things to me too, because you're all in, and it makes me want to be all in. And I love that about you. So you like, we need to have a session once a month so I can stay where I need to be. But this is to say, you know, when we're having these conversations with people that we're selling to, or we're trying to convince something, or we're just trying to tell our story, we're trying to, you know, you use the term take off the mask a little bit, is that, you know, if you do that, the relationship will get to a point, if the person reciprocates, where you can have an honest exchange to say, here's what I'm offering, here's what I can do for you, and the person will trust you when you say it. And like you said, it's fine if it doesn't work out. It's fine if they don't want the thing. It's fine if they don't want to, you know, buy your software or your whatever you're selling. But you got to the spot where you had the honest exchange to say, here's what I can do for you, you trust me, and then we'll take it on at that level. And so that's how I think this has helped me in my sales career, because I go down that track. You're going like this with the little shake up the ladder. If I can do that, then I can have an honest exchange, and it might not be now that works for that person to do what I'm asking them to do, but later they still trust me, and we've created the relationship.
What if the way we sold was that way, the way we led was that way, the way we parented was that way, the way we were colleagues with each other? I mean, in sales, we say we're a team. Is it really a team? Would you give up, if you're at 150% of quota, would you give 40% to the guy who's at 60%?
No.
Okay, so what would it be to be really connected? Dude, I got such a cool lesson from a veteran of the United States Army who was a ranger, and he was in Afghanistan on a mission, woke up 2 weeks later in a hospital in Germany because he got shot in the pelvis, and it basically exploded his organs, his up here, his leg, and he woke up 2 weeks later after having like 18 surgeries. And the reason I got to know him was he's on this like TED Talk circuit. He's kind of like this. He's telling a story about perseverance. And so he tells a story, right, in corporations. So he got whiff of my work, so we got to know each other.
Right.
But it was really fascinating. And I asked him this. I go, after he's telling me a story, I go, you know the kind of like camaraderie that you have in the military? And he goes, yeah, brotherhood. And I was like, yeah. So imagine real brotherhood, sisterhood, whatever we call it. Do you think we could create that in our corporate environments? Right? Now, what a lot of people, I think, would say is, no, because you're not putting your life on the line for another person. He goes like this to me. 1,000%. But the difference in the military is, like, we know everything about the person on this side of me and on this side of me. Because that's where real trust comes from, where you share your entire life stories. So much so, he said, when I'm going on missions, I would need to know like what their body language was. So like if somebody walked into the room and their body language, I would know exactly how they're doing and where they're coming from. But it's because they have no secrets. They're all in.
Right.
You know everything about each other. Their stories. And like, to me, when I think about what we're doing, it's not about being a better salesperson, a better leader. I just think it's about, this is a big one for me because I don't, who am I to say this? I think it's about just being a better person. If we're open, real, I come from a lot of scar tissue, abuse, neglect, making so many mistakes, being a failure, being insecure, always feeling inadequate, fighting for everything I wanted. If I needed to make a point, I'd fight for it. I would hammer. And dude, it's such a heavy way to live, bro. It's not, it's being disconnected from myself. And if we learn to just, dude, take off the armor. We don't have to protect ourselves. We don't have saber-toothed tigers like chasing us in the wild, dude.
But you have bees chasing you.
We have bees, but we're going to be okay. What I found is when we let people in, they let us in back. We build community, and I think we can end the wars. We can end this political divide where we have no progress, and we can start to connect with each other. Just a different way to look at the world, man.
Yeah, there's such a lack of, there's a lack of Ben Zoldans out there, which I think we need more of this kind of talk. Because, you and I might not agree on every single thing across the board, but I hear you and I think, man, if we were more like what Ben's talking about, we'd be dramatically better, right?
Can I stop you right there?
Yes.
And I wish we could put this at the front of the show. Ready for this?
Yeah.
I'm a Jew from LA, liberal tree-hugging Democrat.
Right.
Okay? You are a Christian. Texas
forever. And I just bought my first pair of cowboy boots today, by the way. I'm all in.
Okay, here's the thing. Dude, on paper, we're here.
Yeah.
Know this. I know that if I saw you in 25 years and you needed anything, I'm all in with you. Anything. I love you. And the reason is I know that if I don't talk to you and I see you in 20 years, you would take off the shirt off your back and you would have my back 100% because I know you love me. And that's an example of it. It's like these cultural things on the outside, on paper, it doesn't look like, it doesn't jive. That goes away because I know who you are. I've listened to you at the deepest, rawest levels.
Absolutely.
And you've listened to me at the deepest, rawest levels. And that's where love comes from.
Right, and I was just about to say the things that you said, and it's even more perfect that you can say the things I'm about to say in response because you know it. It's been communicated. It's trusted. It's understood, and it's just like it's one of those things that will last over time. 25 years. I give you 50 years. I don't know if I'll be around in 50 years, just for the record, but that's how that goes. And I appreciate you saying that because I feel the same way, and it's a beautiful thing. The thing that can we switch gears here?
All you, brother.
Hey, so this podcast is one of those forums where I want people to tell the story on how they struggled into the success that they have made out of their business. And so, we've hit all these things from like a scattershot angle, which is beautiful because that's real conversation. But can you tell me about the process of writing your book? And the thing that struck me right out of the gate is you didn't like the name of the book, and you're honest and open about it. Can you tell me about what made you, or where you were before you started Storyleaders, before you wrote the book, and then what prompted Storyleaders and what kind of success that's had, how it's grown over time, and then give us like a real practical view of how that looked, and kick it off.
All right. Well, I'll start by sharing this. I was doing a workshop, and this younger guy goes through my workshop and pulls me over at the end of the workshop and goes, "Ben, you know what I love so much about your workshop?" And I go, what? And he goes, you're not that good at it. And I'm like, he said I was about to cuss on the show, and I was about to say, to this guy, and he goes like this to me. His name is Brett. He goes, no, what I mean is this. He goes, you're trying. Like, you're trying. And I think about that because, like, that means a lot of, I think that's a reflection of really where my story begins. I don't come from a lot of these things that we talk about. I don't think I was all in. Mm-hmm. I was happy because I was insecure. When you're insecure, like you're playing, you haven't played basketball in a while, and you go out there and you're like, oh, I haven't played in a while. I don't really know. You set the bar low.
Right.
Because we're insecure.
Mm-hmm.
But when we're insecure, you're timid. You're not all in. You're not like so laser focused. I come from that insecurity. I come from a place of signing up for all the playbooks, because if that, how do you make it in life? Career path, making dough, you make this much money than the next, and you get promoted, and after a while, it was when I was probably in my 30s that it just felt shallow, kind of felt like it was my career that I thought was a success. I wasn't connected to it. I didn't feel, I was depressed with what I was doing.
Right.
I remember thinking when I was younger, like, man, I just want to I want to do something. Like, I want to just live.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to put any cliches around. I just want to live. And I felt like I wasn't living. And I started to look at people around me that were. And I was starting to just slowly take inventory of what they were doing. In the book, I tell the story of this guy, John Scanlon, who was so all in. He was such a benevolent leader, but everybody followed him. He was so wholehearted, vulnerable storyteller. I remember being with him in a taxi ride about 12, 15 years ago from downtown Chicago to O'Hare in traffic, so for like an hour. And he was like so all in with me, listening to me, like he was just so connected. So I was starting to take an inventory of like what made these people so rare and unique and special, and just wanted to get a piece of that magic.
Mm-hmm.
Storyleaders, really, my business came from that. And then McGraw-Hill got wind of the work my partner and I were doing, and basically said, you have to write a book. I never really read, so like I didn't want to sign up for that, but my ego got, they actually paid us money to like commission us to write it, so we had to write it.
Oh, okay. I thought this went inverse. So you started Storyleaders when you like kind of came to a spot in your career where you're like, this isn't what I want to be doing. I need to go a different way. And you started these training. Well, I'll use the term training courses for communication.
Actually, no. I started to take pieces of training for myself so I could rewire myself.
Mm-hmm.
I kind of looked at this from the inside out. It was just like I wanted some of this magic. And as I was learning things, I synthesized the things I was learning and experience that made me feel better about myself. I took sciences, I took things out there from other smart people and kind of brought them together. And after about a year, then I started to go, oh my God, this could be a program we bring into companies.
Okay.
When I did that, then our publisher, McGraw-Hill, were like, you need to write a book about this. And I was like, peace out, I can't do that. I can't even write my name. But
it's hard to make Z's.
Dude. And then, and lo and behold, we just kind of found a way just to get it down on paper.
Yeah.
And I feel, I wrote that book about 6 years ago, and I kind of feel like I've learned so much. If I could, have sleepless nights for about 6 months, I'd like to write another one to really just speak on behalf of the people I work with and tell their stories.
Mm-hmm.
But this thing just kind of took on like an organic, one thing led to another.
Yeah.
It was funny. I was listening to a podcast of somebody I admire, and she was talking about how if you've ever set out with a real major goal in life to do something, it'll create a paralysis because you'll go, oh my gosh, that's going to require all of that work? Like, no way. For me, Storyleaders and the book, it was always just one step. Today I want to just learn about this or put this into practice. That led to this, and it was like a domino effect.
Mm-hmm.
I think that speaks to something that I've learned in my life that's counterintuitive for me, which is to really follow like the currents around me, not try to be so in control.
Yeah, okay.
One step to another. It's like everything is sales cycle control. By the way, or control the conversation.
Mm-hmm.
Dude, what are we doing? It's like, like we live in a way that's antithetical to how we're supposed to live.
Right. What kind of conversation is controlled at all, right?
Next time, any of these experts tell us. And here's the thing: the truth is, like, I need to practice empathy because people are doing the best they can with what they had.
Right.
We're just operating from bad models. So the real story for me, though, if you really want to get to the core of this, I don't think it's about the work I'm doing in my 30s or my 40s. I think it's about my life is where I come from, dude. I just remember being a kid and being so, like, saying to myself, these injustices that I experienced, one of them was abuse.
Right.
And one of them was like, I don't want to be a kid anymore. I want to grow up and like defend myself. And if I see an injustice in the world, like I want to do something about it. Mm-hmm. And it's like probably to get out of the pain that I experienced. And like now what I see is these things we're talking about, to me, are the antidote, the medicine we need for the injustices of the cultures we've created, which is disconnected. Right. And that might sound esoteric or new agey, but it's like, to me, it's just like I think there's an injustice in we've created a culture that's mechanical, robotic. As you say, we put up barriers to each other. Information technology has shined a light on technology, and we're losing humanity. And my two daughters are both artists. My oldest daughter goes to an art. Well, she's an art major. Mm-hmm. And I'm watching her. It's like this renaissance of the integration of arts and the humanities combined with technology and all of these things. Like, I just think we should usher in an era of like this renaissance period where we're looking at the arts and the humanities and not all this left brain stuff. Because to me, that's the injustice. And my way of dealing with it is I'm going to contribute my piece to bringing in some humanity around that.
Yeah, Ben, you mentioned something that I think is really interesting that's going on right now is, technology taking away humanity. And the only way that ever stops is if someone goes out and says, I'm just going to disconnect. And what I think about in a historical frame is we always talk about historical, like you mentioned a historical period, the Renaissance. And we talk about, on this actual podcast, we talk about the Industrial Revolution or the birth of the Internet. And it's like, we always assume that those things happened once and they'll never happen again. But what's to keep the Renaissance, the new Renaissance, from occurring tomorrow or next month?
And the Renaissance was really the integration of, it wasn't just, like, people have it wrong. It wasn't like to go from this period of this to this. It was a convergence of the humanities.
Yeah.
Combined with science and what we were learning. And I mean, here's the irony. Right now, we're using technology to take our conversation out to the world. So I don't think we need to be haters on certain things. I just think that if we're shining a light on something, we're missing outside the spotlight. What we're missing over here is creativity and imagination.
Right.
And our stories come from, our creative sides, our imagination, our memories, our experiences. But we're shining a light. It's like in our school system, we're emphasizing, the linear, logical, math, reading, science, and budgets are going away, and we're dismissing the arts, and creativity and imagination are being shoved aside for conformity and uniformity. So really, it's more about being like whole. Right.
Well, I tell you this, like half of people are more linear brain, and half of people are more artistic. And so if you don't educate people in the artistic fashion, you're going to alienate half of these people anyways. And so, we're talking around, just say that last thing you were saying. This is embarrassing. My brain is, you're the type of guy that sends your brain in 10 different directions. So replay that last thought you were saying.
Well, I feel like we're the unintended consequence of paying attention to only one thing is we're leaving all this other stuff behind, and we're ignoring creativity, imagination, the things that actually make us human.
Yeah, okay, so my hiccup there was I am all for technology on every level. Like, that's how things are going to progress anyways. What you can do, and I was having a conversation on the last podcast with a friend of mine that's promoting artificial intelligence, right? So that can get pretty wild pretty quick, especially if you let your brain go around. creatively, what can happen out of that? Like, how can we dismiss humanity more with that tool? Or how can we make human interaction greater with that tool? And that is $1 million question. I'd say it's probably $1 trillion question. Someone's going to answer it, and if the wrong person answers it and it gets adopted, then we create a harder way to live, right? So like, we're talking political here, like left, right are more at odds than they've ever been. I don't think anyone's under the presupposition that things aren't kind of uncomfortable in the world right now. And are we creating tools that make those divides greater, or are we creating tools that break those sections down more?
You know, and I'll end with this kind of piece. I think deeply in my heart, I'm an optimist around this issue, especially with artificial intelligence. Mm-hmm. And I'll say this, going back to spending time in the hospital with my dad, I really, some things really like struck me. Because we were talking about it. My father worked for a company that was an AI company. And he's a technologist. Yeah, and we were talking about it, and we were talking about how all these jobs are going to be automated. I mean, even doctors, there's science that's going to be, with artificial intelligence. But what was amazing when I was at his bedside was this. There's like these oncologists that are coming in and out of there. These are people performing science and taking care of my father. My dad never talked about the doctors. In fact, we all hated it when the doctors came in. You know who my dad loved?
You.
I hope so. He loved the nurses more.
Okay.
Because the nurses would come in, and they don't do the soft stuff. They're administering drugs. They're getting the patients to do their exercise. They would get my father, every 2 hours to get up. They were doing things in a non-prescriptive way that nurses were like so connected and open and had this patient care front and center in this bedside manner, whatever labels we call it.
Right.
But they were the eyes and ears of the patients, and my dad would always talk about, you could see him light up, dude, when the nurses came in. Mm-hmm. And it was like that human connection. It was literally like every time they came in, they were putting their hand on his arm and saying like, you're going to be okay. And there's this human touch. And the reason I point that out is, a lot of times like we think we need to be like doctors, diagnose and prescribe. The sales profession promotes that. I don't think so. I'm wondering if there's the people who operate at that level, they're going to be automated out, especially by AI, or maybe product developers. They're like the scientists. They're like the doctors doing the medicine.
Yeah.
But we in the human business need to be more like nurses and think about that bedside manner. And I believe that even when AI automates out a lot of functions, instead of creating a divide, it's going to create a need for the bedside care and the human connection, because we're going to crave it more. So I'm this optimist that more of our jobs, salespeople, marketeers, maybe even lawyers, who knows, at some point, are going to start to, we're going to be forced to evolve to be more like nurses because of this rise in AI. And for that, like, I'm in this weird way trying to reconcile it all, but I'm an optimist around that.
Right. Yeah. Well, you spawn a couple really killer questions with just that frame of thought there, and that's probably for another podcast. Next time you're coming down here, and you're going to get you in the office, and we're going to do like it'll be great, and we'll expand on this because I love spending time with you. Thanks for doing this, but I have 2 more questions for you before I let you go. You ready?
Invite me to Austin.
What's that?
You're going to bring me out to your beautiful state?
Yes, I am, and you're going to sit in this room, and we're gonna shoot the breeze again. So,
okay.
2 things.
What?
When you started writing your book, or when you started going down the track to start Storyleaders, which is something that has affected so many people and been such a personally valuable thing in my career, when you met the speed bump of, hey, I don't read books, I don't want to write a book, what got you through that?
Well, the first thing I did, because I was intimidated to write, was someone said, go buy dictation software. Sorry. So I went out and bought instead of buying like the 99 version, I bought like the 399 Dragon.
Dragon, yeah, I have that too.
But the good mod, like the version that so I sit down, I load it up, I get ready, and really the book's like it's really my workshop. I'm telling stories. I'm taking somebody through the process that I would in my workshop. But I found interesting is this. I would start talking into my computer and not looking at anybody, and I'd be like, and I like you know when you record your voicemail greeting, you do it and you start over. I kept doing that. What I realized was that I couldn't do it. I couldn't talk into a computer, so I had to learn how to write. And then I got really intimidated, and I was so fixated on it because I was fixated on the book. And every time I'd write, I'd just get locked up like this. And I will never forget it, dude. Mm-hmm. One night, and I think this is a lesson for all of us in the communication business. Really, one night, my family was asleep. It was like 10 o'clock at night. I'm watching TV. I'm just relaxed. I just said to myself, I had an experience that happened to me that day, and I wrote down that experience. And it was maybe a one page.
Right.
And I was like, that wasn't that hard. So the next night, I waited till the kids went to sleep.
Right.
And it was, I don't know what time it was, 10 o'clock. And I started to write the stuff from my workshop. And I wasn't worried about grammar or how it's supposed to be and all these rules that people told me to do. I started to write. And I started to tell stories. And I was like, this isn't that hard. But I had to divorce myself from the outcome and the goal. Because every time I got fixated on that, I would get locked up. I just told the stories just free. Instead of working backwards, I was kind of working the flow.
Right.
And I created this habit for it took me 4 or 5 months where every night I just waited until the kids went to sleep. I had no distractions, so I could be all in and relaxed. And I just started to write the way I wanted to write. I found my voice.
Yeah, man. And you found it well, man, because it's been something that's been, like I said, so valuable to me. And like I said, here's the book, What Great Salespeople Do. Storyleaders comes around the country and does workshops all over the place. Highly recommended. It's just storyleaders.com, correct?
Yep.
Beautiful. And then my last question for you, and I ask this to everyone, is if I took everything away from you, all of your money, that nice plant behind you, that it looks like Roman or Greek crown molding up there, your house, your family, your business, everything away, and you had to start all over, what would you do?
I'm doing it, brother. I don't know.
Well, I just took it away from you. You have to start practically again. And it's, do you pursue McGraw-Hill and say, I want to write you another book? Or do you call Penguin? Or do you just go straight to Amazon? Or do you start the program, your workshops first and go that direction? What do you do?
That's a tough one. I want to open up a taco truck at one point. That's like my fantasy. I want to do that at some point. But I think the question is the question what would I do or how would I do what I'm doing differently?
That it's open for interpretation, and you'd be surprised how people take it differently. So whatever comes to you first as what you would do that.
I would you know what the truth is, man? I wish I had a clean answer. I don't know. I don't know what the answer then. I almost feel inadequate by saying that to you. But the truth is, I don't know. I think I found purpose in my career about 15 years into my career. And part of me wants to say I wish I would have found that purpose earlier. But then I don't think I would change anything because I think it was through not having purpose and kind of just going through the motions.
Right.
That's really sort of, and through my, skinning my knees, that is helped me want to just be on this path. I don't know. I kind of feel that different about that thing. I just think we're all in this. For me, for my money, it's kind of like not having a lot of regrets.
Yeah.
So I'm probably the worst, most incoherent person at fielding that question.
Hey, that's part of it, man. So
maybe that's my answer.
Yeah, your answer, your initial answer of I would do this is a great one. And then some people hear that question and they say, okay, so if you took everything away from me, and these are these natural laws that come up like we're talking about, is some people react in such a way where they say, okay, so I've got to eat, and so first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go get a night shift janitor job because that's what's most available. It's the pragmatic versus the ideal, and you answer in an ideal fashion, which I think is a great way. That is We'll
That's,
cut.
that's that, I can keep going, bro. Like, I love talking to you, and I want to hear what it is for you.
Yeah, well, I'll tell you what. If I had to start all over, and I got, we'll wrap it up here pretty quick because I know you probably I've taken more time than we planned. But if I had to start all over and you took all my stuff away from me and I just had to become a guy on the street, I would go get a job at a restaurant. I would work nights, and then I would get a security job during the day because that's the easiest thing you can do. And then I would start trying to build from there, and I would be reading. I would be on the internet trying to learn how to sell things. I would be searching out guys like you that are saying how to sell things best. And then I would try to start, I would work my way into what I'm progressing into right now. And so I answer that question in a really pragmatic way. It's just, how is this going to work? How is it going to hit the floor and progress from there? And this might be one of our differences in how, like you mentioned, you're a tree-hugging liberal Jewish guy in LA, and I'm a Texan, and I'm sitting down here thinking, all right, so how is this all going to work? It's these differences exist in creative minds versus, I'll be quite frank, less creative minds like my own.
Maybe we are doing more of what we would be doing. And we just don't know we're doing these things. Because when I met you 3-4 years ago, you seemed like that guy. I mean, your appearance was, oh, look at this punk. But when that went away, I was like, look at this curious guy. So that curiosity of reading, watching, observing, monitoring, being like an investigative journalist, you became that guy. You were the guy asking all those questions in the back of the room.
Well, I had to figure out who you were so I could trust you.
So maybe you have been enlisting what you've always wanted to do. Like, maybe you're doing it. Maybe most of us are actually doing it. We're just not paying attention to it. Mm-hmm. But anyways, man, I appreciate you a ton. Thanks for giving me the platform. And
you got it, man. Thanks for coming on. Appreciate your time, and we'll do this again real shortly. Ladies and gentlemen, Ben Zoldan. Thanks, bud. Talk soon.
All right. Take care.
Thanks for checking out the Unconsumed podcast. To learn more about Ben Zoldan's organization, Storyleaders, you can go to www.storyleaders.com and look for public workshops in your area. And I'd like to say thanks to the Unconsumed podcast sponsors that make this all possible. Onnit Professional Scouting Services, TableauHelp.com, Adventures Out Back, and Crosschecks Healthcare AI.